almost ready. I would like to welcome everyone to the Candidates Night for this year. This is our 19th year of independence from the developer. And once again, we have a strong slate of candidates for you here tonight with 3 candidates for 2 openings. I'm Dan Avery. I'm the chairman of the search committee, and with me tonight I have Randy Stolpe, who's on the search committee with me this year, Joanne Ellison, and David James, who are collecting the written questions. We're also on the committee. John Brors and Paul Rush served on the committee. They're both traveling right now, so couldn't be with us tonight. But we have 7 people on board. There's 2 openings, and they're 3-year terms. So of these 3 candidates, you're going to be electing 2 candidates for a 3-year term. If you haven't done it, by the way, it's kind of common knowledge, but silence your cell phones if you haven't. We organized the search committee back in April and have met for months since, both looking into people on the committees and involved with our community to see those that might serve us well on the board of directors. And I think we found 3 solid, strong candidates for us here. You're going to hear from them with their independent remarks, and then they'll address your questions. We had a drawing a little bit ago and set our order of speaking for the opening remarks, and we'll use that order for the first question, and then we'll rotate through, give everybody a chance to go first, second, or third. The format tonight has been changed a little bit from the past few years anyway, and we realize, and you can see right here, that of a couple thousand homes, we don't reach a huge percentage of our residents, and as a result, we're video recording the proceedings tonight, and it's going to be posted up online. And within the next couple of days, you'll see a news flash from the administrative office that will give you the link to the YouTube video of tonight's proceedings. The fact that we're recording it has also been motivation for changing the format to use written questions only, to try and capture all the audio questions from the audience. It was going to be a challenge, and this should work out. We hope it works out. Bear with us. We're breaking new ground a little bit here, so there could be a few challenges, and one of our efforts is going to be to try and aggregate common questions. There will be undoubtedly several people in the crowd that are going to ask a very similar question. Joanne and David are going to attempt, as they get your questions, as time permits, to try and, in real time, aggregate those, and perhaps your question will be molded together with a couple of others. But we will attempt to try and get everyone's question out and answered, and so that you hear your answer from the 3 candidates, whether you've addressed it to 1, 2, or all 3 of them. And if you did address your question to only one of them, and the others would like to respond to that, they'll have the opportunity to do so. With that, I think that's... another point, though, after the fact, once we finish the question periods tonight, the candidates have all agreed to hang around a little bit afterwards. So if you have particular issues that you'd like to raise with them that aren't necessarily questions as much as to state your opinions and thoughts on a particular issue, feel free to do it. We're not going to use this forum as an opportunity for you to do that. So if your written question is not a question, it probably won't get read. So if you've got an opinion, plan to bring that up after the fact. With that, first in our order tonight, with her opening remarks, will be Reenie Romey.
Thank you, Dan. Hello, I am Reenie Romey, but I think most of you here know me as Reenie. First, I'd like to thank the search committee for their support and their confidence, and also for all of you coming tonight to the candidate forum. Is the volume okay? Oh, okay. When my husband Al and I moved here from upstate New York in 2007, we found that Tucson was the perfect choice for us. Al loves the desert and the rocks, and I am the golfer. Having board experience in our golf and tennis clubs in New York, I look forward to sharing my experiences with the SaddleBrooke golf community. I have served on the SaddleBrooke HOA1 Golf Committee, for 5 years on the board of SBWGA Women's 18 Golfers in many roles, including president. I also am a member of the Southern Arizona course rating team that evaluates golf courses for the USGA. Last year, I became a member of the Long Range Planning Committee. As a member, I was appointed to a special joint subcommittee of 4 residents from HOA 1 and HOA 2 working together. This benchmarking project will jointly survey ours and 5 Southern Arizona communities. And our goal is to provide both boards with data to assist in their marketing and planning efforts. But the real gain has been the growing awareness of how similar our communities are and how much our quality of life and financial soundness can benefit if we work together and share our resources. I have become passionate that we find more opportunities where we can work on projects with HOA 2. Such small steps will increase the likelihood of extending the reciprocal use agreement that is currently in place. Some people may not be aware that should this agreement expire in 2021, we may not be able to use the amenities in HOA 2. I believe that it is important to build positive attitudes in both of our communities now to reach this goal. We need to be patient, open-minded, and share our successes. The issue of reciprocity and how it affects our community is just around the corner. The profile of the people moving into our community is changing. We are facing new issues, and we need new thinking on the board. To summarize, my goal would be focused on the reciprocity use agreement that is currently in place and being reviewed by the board. I feel that the best possible outcome for SaddleBrooke HOA 1 is the 5-year continuation of the agreement with the proviso that we put joint committees in place to negotiate a more permanent agreement. But we cannot assume that HOA 2 will extend the reciprocity agreement. And if they do not, we must be prepared with a plan ready to go. We cannot wait until 2020 to start these negotiations and to prepare the alternate plans which may be necessary. We need to think creatively regarding the future availability of essential amenities and how to allocate our financial and human resources. In the planning field, we call this thinking out of the box. I've had this experience in the oil industry with data analysis and its use in forecasting the future. We now need fresh energy, fresh ideas on the board, and this is what I can bring to the table. Secondly, we need new technology to elevate our lifestyle. There is amazing work going on within the communities. For example, we are now investigating radio frequency reader technology for building access and data collection in SaddleBrooke HOA 1. And there would be a compatible system in HOA 2. We need to facilitate timely communication between our board, our administration, and our residents. We need to make our website the go-to for source of information. We need to seek improved internet options for the community. And we develop possibly smartphone applications for real-time communication. More information for us and a safer community. In closing, there are 7 seats on the SaddleBrooke HOA 1 board. Each member has to make a contribution. If they don't, we are wasting a seat. I will bring new ideas, new energy to the board. I've lived here for 11 years, and I am Reenie Romey. I want to be on the board to serve you, and I need your vote.
Next up, we have Janet Tucker.
Good afternoon. My name is Janet Tucker. Louder. Good afternoon. My husband Peter and I retired and moved here in 2013. Peter's a golfer, and so that's now his full-time hobby. I joined joined the Art Guild and started working on committees. In fact, I will have 5 years of continuous service on SaddleBrooke committees by the end of this year. I've been on the Unit Rep Committee, I'm currently on Safety and Rec, I'm currently on Long Range Planning, and I'm currently on the Finance Committee. Through this experience, I have learned a couple of things that I think will make me an effective board member. I understand our committee structure, I understand what our committees are working on, and most importantly, I've come to understand the business of SaddleBrooke. I knew early on that I wanted to run for the board, but I felt it was extremely important that I first learn how our HOA worked. In my professional life, I found that I was unable to make effective decisions for an organization or effective contributions to an organization until I first understood their core values, their goals, and the challenges facing them. These became my goals in SaddleBrooke. I've chosen this particular time to run for the board because we have a very important issue facing the community. As Reenie has already brought up, it's the renewal of the reciprocity agreement with HOA 2. This expires in 2021, and negotiations need to begin certainly by 2020, if not before. Now, I think a lot of people, and I included, believe this agreement will be renewed. However, I think it's vital that the agreement is renewed as it reads today, in its entirety, without carve-outs. The goal of renewal is to continue to provide full access to all amenities, all clubs, and all activities for all the members of HOA 1 and 2. This is a real selling point for new buyers, very important to us, and it's a benefit to current residents. I believe that any significant change to this agreement would impact almost everyone in HOA 1 and 2. Now, I don't want to leave you feeling hopeless, and Reenie's already touched on her committee. There are several committees and some departments that are actually laying the groundwork and working together with HOA 2. But as 2020 approaches, I believe both HOAs are entering a crucial period. In fact, I believe the next 12 to 24 months will determine the success of our community. As we begin our work with the HOA 2 board to renew this agreement, I think that we need to remain approachable, we need to be open-minded, we need to be unemotional, and I think we need to have a very clear idea of what each HOA can and cannot do together. I'm proud of the efforts our board has made in working with the HOA 2 board. Our board has offered them the kind of advice that they can't get from anyone that hasn't already been through what they're going through. Our board has offered them open access to all of our governing documents, and they continue to keep the lines of communication open. Going forward, our board and our residents will need to remain open to this less experienced board, but no less dedicated board. It may require letting go of some old ideas, some old snubs, and some painful history. In my career as a healthcare executive, I found that the best decisions are achieved through listening, analyzing facts without ego, asking questions, being open-minded, building alliances, being humble, and trying to sort out reality from rumor. That is not easy for me, everything's humorous. I believe my experience in SaddleBrooke will allow me to join the board with a broad depth of knowledge and experience. So, I'm going to leave you with this. The board works for you, and I'm prepared and ready to serve you as a board member. So I'm asking for your vote today. Thank you very much for coming.
And finally, Fred Pilster.
Hi, my name is Fred Pilster. I moved here in 2008 because I love this area. Love the amenities, golf, tennis, and all of our amenities. I've prepared a profile for you. It's in the back, and I also have one on the web that covers a lot of what I've done. I did have a SaddleBrooke moment when I prepared the first one, and I stated that my term, I am on the board right now as the secretary and have been for the last 2 years, that my term started in 2010. It seemed like it did, but it really didn't. So My term started in 2011. I had a one-year term, then I was re-elected for a 3-year term. And as all of you know, I think that you can only be 2 consecutive terms. I took a year off and then was re-elected for my 3rd term, and I'm secretary right now. The board actually does more things than just I believe too, like both of my candidates have stated, is that we need to focus on the working with HOA2 and the reciprocal agreement, but there's a lot more to it than that. Some of the things that I've worked with the administration and the board members on doing and our management is we've dealt with a balanced cash budget here for the last few years. In fact, all of the years that I've been on the board. There have been no increases in the annual fees. In fact, I was the only one that voted against the management instructions the board's instructions to management this year to raise the fees. I was the only board member that didn't, and I usually vote with the board. Our board is consistent in our moving forward, but this was one of the few things that I didn't agree with. We've improved the amenities here. I think if you've been around this community, you've seen that when we do something to an amenity, it's an improvement. It's not just replacing it or repairing it. We usually improve it, upgrade it. And you've seen that in the golf courses. We put millions of dollars into these golf courses. It's our biggest amenity. We've just gotten through putting $750,000 into the tennis facilities for courts that are supposed to last for 20 years with resurfacing. We have done our roads. Our roads are our other biggest amenity, and we've done an excellent job. We have some of the best roads in all of southern Arizona. The Catalina Rec Center is just being completed. The clubhouse and our Roadrunner Grill outside patio, all of these things we've done during the term that I've been involved with the board, and we're going to have more things coming up. Your replacement reserves give you a real good idea of what those things are for the future and where we're going to put our money in those. We build up a significant cash in our replacement reserve fund and our operations. So something that many communities don't have, and yet I'm very proud of our community and what we've done there. I've acted as a liaison to the golf, tennis, house, SEIC committees, and I've also was the director of the ad hoc communication committee, which is no longer in place. In my prior life, from 2000 to 2008, I was the president of an HOA board of 1,550 residents, and I was this for 8 years. So I've had very significant experiences working with boards, with capital, budgets, and with the legal. The legal is a very important aspect of it, and as you understand, working with the reciprocal agreement, we're going to see more of that. The legal aspects. My goals and priorities, you can see much of this on my resume, and I have a 4-page one too if you want it. But they're primarily to address the reciprocal as one of the main ones. But I think to continue to fund and update the replacement reserves and the capital improvement fund to determine the need and cost and limitations for expanding our amenities. We're talking about a new community center and a pickleball or similar contemporary sports. We need to analyze all of the revenue sources that we have and determine if we can expand them. You can see all of this on my resume, but I really want to focus and say that I want to work for you, continue to work for you, to expand and improve SaddleBrooke. And that's my goal, and that's the reason I'm running for another 3-year term. Thank you all.
Thank you to the candidates, and at this point we have some questions that have been submitted. We're going to attempt to get them asked in a manner that covers everybody's interests and aggregates similar questions. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge from what I'm seeing right now, but let's have at it. If you don't have the forms, if you want to ask a question, you haven't written one out, forms are in the back, and Joanne and David are picking up the finished forms. At this point, a question that is asked of all three candidates, and the order will be the same at this point, with Reenie answering first, then Janet, then Fred. The question is to request to please comment on the state of the HO1 reserves. Are the reserves too much, too little, just right? And why do you feel that way?
Okay, thank you. I believe that the current level of the reserves, I have the number here. I can get it for you. But before I don't bother digging it out, but I think that our board has followed a very, very good financial climate for us, and the philosophy behind the replacement reserve really hasn't changed, and I would not see that we should veer from that current philosophy, because I think that's one of the greatest things about this community, that we can go ahead and make progress because we have the comfort of knowing we have a good financial climate.
I don't have the exact number, but our reserve stands somewhere around $2 million and change. And this was established by a group of really important people that work in this community, our finance committee, our board treasurer, and our investment committee. It's audited every 5 years, and the Cliff Notes version is that audit looks to see about the appropriateness of our funding levels in our reserve. And there has not ever been a recommendation that we decrease that funding level in any way. Also, since I sit on the finance committee in the middle of all these accountants, I gotta tell you, these guys and gals like to really look at everything, and they're looking at everything. And I feel very confident that if you can get a room full of accountants to agree that this is a reasonable level, it probably is. We put 2.5% in every year. Am I doing it on time? Okay. We put 2.5% in every year. The finance committee actually looks at every expenditure that comes out of the CIF and the RRF every month. So I feel very confident in our level of the reserve funding, and I feel confident in the oversight.
Our reserves are running somewhere, if you had the replacement reserve fund and the CIF together, they're running annually over $3 million. We fund probably close to $2 million a year if you count funding the replacement reserves and the CIF. We have over 1,000 items in our replacement reserve. We're more than adequately funded to cover these items. Every year we contribute about the same amount that we spend. Some years we spend more, other years we don't spend as much. Many people think that depreciation is the same thing as reserves. It's not. So the reserves is a really critical aspect. It's a very healthy aspect of our community. I personally feel that we've got more cash in there than we need, but that's my personal feeling. We have enough to cover the items that we want to do in the future, and it's very well laid out for the next 10 to 20 years. You can go to this piece of paper and pull it up on the website and look at it. It's a thick, very voluminous. I'd like to see it done in the form of some graphs so that the community can understand it better, how we fund it and how we expend it. It's a critical aspect of our community in keeping it together in a contemporary form.
Thank you. Next question is kind of a warm and fuzzy question for each of you. At this point, we'll start with Janet, go to Fred, and then to Reenie. Name an accomplishment you are proud of.
There's been a lot. But I'm really going to get kind of sappy here and say that the best gig I've ever had is being a mom. That's probably not what you're interested in. So I was a hospital CEO at one point in my career, and I've had a long career, and I've loved every minute of it. I had some great jobs. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Well, I'm like Janet. If I look at my major accomplishment, and my wife would appreciate this, I married her out by the second hole on SaddleBrooke. It's one of my real major accomplishments in my life, and I'm very pleased about it, and I wish she were. Anyway, for the HOA, my accomplishments, I think my proudest accomplishment as an HOA board member is not necessarily here, it's in California. It took us 6-7 years to build a park for our community. We spent almost $1 million on it. We had to survey all the residents. We're doing something like that here right now with the community center. I think we're looking at a very similar thing where we're going to do a plan, we're going to survey the residents, we're going to check and see what the usage is. And but for my accomplishment, it was getting that park built. That was one of the reasons I stayed as president for 8 years. And I finished that the last year I was on the board.
I'm not going to get sappy at all. Mine is really bricks and mortar, but something that I achieved with my husband and my family. We were relocated to Germany in mid-1980s. My husband was on assignment with IBM. We had children 7 and 9 years old, and we were very. We figured we could do anything, including dropping them off at German school. Okay, but we soon realized that there were better educations even in Germany, but not in the Stuttgart area, and we, with a group of 4 families, all on assignment in Germany, we decided that we would try and develop some type of an international education in the area. And with help of my tutor, I spent a lot of time at the Ministry of Education in Stuttgart, and we explained what we wanted to do. And they were sympathetic, but I didn't think they realized what we meant. And we hired 3 teachers, rented 3 rooms, bought books in US and had them sent to Germany. And then 6 months later, we went down to the Ministry of Education and said, we're ready to go. And their eyes, well, they're a little more conservative and less adventurous than the Americans. They said, okay, let's see how successes with our failures. And we may not have hit the mark with the patio, but you know, I think we have many more options ahead there. I think Q for Review was a success. So I think let's be a little more positive and let's look at what we've achieved. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. I think our order here. Where we at? We're at answering first, am I right? All right then. All right. Here's one for all 3 of you. So figure out your order. What new amenities would you like to add to SaddleBrooke HOA 1?
What new amenities? Well, I personally would like to add pickleball, but I don't believe there's any place in our community at HOA 1 where we can do it. I think it's a great sport, but I think there are places in SaddleBrooke where we could put it, but HOA 2 is not willing to talk to us about them right now. There's things like that. I think there's a need for possibly a community center, but it's going to depend on the reciprocal agreement and sharing our amenities with HOA 2. I'd like to see HOA 2 and HOA 1 get together and assess possibly merging. This requires getting an outside consultant, going through a whole series of things and looking at ways, but it's going to be totally cost effective and to all of our benefits if we can be one community. And it'll help us in promoting our community outside, because I think we're the top active retirement community in Southern Arizona, the West.
Reenie?
Yes. I'd also say that I am very open-minded about pickleball, and it is a good sport, and it has a popularity, and it's a plus. But I just can't say enough that to me it's finding the place and finding the space. But I think that would be one of the ones right up on top as far as a new amenity. Thank you.
Well, there's a couple of things as I think about this. It would be nice to be able to add walking trails here. And I know that's not a new idea, but it's still an idea I think we need to pursue. I am excited that we are beginning to look at perhaps a new community center, although it's an abysmal name, we'll have to come up with something. But we need additional space for our fitness classes and for meeting and for dance. So I think that's an amenity that we really do need. Well, let's talk about pickleball for a minute then, because I too agree with my fellow candidates that I'd like to see pickleball in our community. Or I guess I should actually say, I'd like to see pickleball available for all of our HOA-run residents in this community. There's a couple of facts about Bobcat Canyon, and that is that we don't own that land, so that really does limit some of our options. I mean, we don't have control over some of those things. And the HOA2 board did vote just in their last meeting to partner with SPA in evaluating 6 to 8 new outdoor courts at Bobcat Canyon. So, we'll have to wait and see whether permitting occurs. They may need parking studies, who knows. But I do think that it would behoove us to have a seat at the table and talk with SPA and HOA2. I don't think we have to give anything away, but we have no way to mitigate the negative impact of new courts if we're not sitting at the table. And I think we need to be able to protect our residents in the Bobcat Canyon as best we can, because we can't prevent the courts from being built. So I think having a seat at the table and negotiating with them and talking with them is the way to go. We want to be able to manage sound abatement. We need to think of lighting for our residents that live in that area. So I am supportive of pickleball, but I'm also supportive of the poor people in Bobcat Canyon.
Okay. We have a bunch of questions that are they've segued into the subject of pickleball in a way that, let me just I think probably the best bet is for me to read through several of these questions, and then we're going to throw it open to all 3 candidates to further address the subject of pickleball a little bit. So let me just read these quickly and then we'll get on with it. What's your opinion on the board providing pickleball facilities for HOA1 players? How will you monetarily support pickleball as a club, since significant financial support has been given to clubs with smaller memberships like tennis and billiards? Yes or no? Would you support new pickleball courts at Bobcat Canyon? If yes, how would you monetarily support pickleball? And reference to the proximity to the homes within HOA1 that Bobcat Canyon represents, and as a board member, would you continue to support the policy of not supporting pickleball financially? And since you'll all 3 be responding to the question on pickleball as I've kind of laid it out here, here's one that's specifically addressed to Fred, who's been on board. You've been on board, so you get the tough ones. You've served 3 terms, 7 years, yet we don't have pickleball courts. What will you do specifically to provide this important amenity? So if you want to lead off, Fred, go ahead.
Well, Chris, Tony, and I feel that we're lucky to still have wives that love us after all of this. We've spent a lot of time looking at locations. We've been up to the state offices in Phoenix. We've tried to meet with the HOA2 board and to come up with locations that will work for pickleball, because the board feels that it is a amenity that would be beneficial for our community, since so many communities have it now. So we've looked very seriously at this. It isn't like we just arbitrarily rejected it. And we also had over 200 residents come to us and complain about the location there and the noise that they get, and the lights and the traffic and all of that. We feel, and we've had some engineers look at it, feel that the best location for pickleball expansion here at SaddleBrooke is in HOA2's areas. They're at Desert View, where they already have all of the amenities, and you've got 4 tennis courts to be easily converted. Also, I personally think that their driving range, they are out there, and that driving range would be an ideal location for it. It doesn't affect anybody, and it's perfect. You've got parking, and you've got all of the amenities there. So it's not like we've been rejecting pickleball arbitrarily. Pickleball this community was not, HOA 1 was not designed for it. And that's one of the reasons why it got built at Bobcat Canyon, because Robeson gave the land to HOA 2, who had no residents around it, and Robeson forced it down our throats, and our residents' throats. And you just can't do that to your friends. And the people, you wouldn't want it done to you. That's the way I like to work. If I don't want it done to me, I shouldn't be doing it to somebody else. And that's the way it comes across. And I know Jack Powers, he's here, his home's here, hi Jack. His home overlooks those courts. And the noise, he's got metal shutters that are down every day because of the noise. He's got it the full time that it's there. And it's just not an ideal spot, and they're talking about expanding it. Anyway, hopefully we can get it. I'd support it. I think the community should vote on it if we're using HOA 1 monies. But we've got plenty of money in our coffers, running $7 to $8 million, so we could easily support it if we could find the right location.
I just have to say off the bat that I sort of got hives when you talk about spending all of our money like that. In such a cavalier way, it's like being going shopping. I really don't have an answer about how we could support it, except that I do believe that in our CCNRs, there's a piece in there that speaks to the fact that the HOA will support those amenities that were built originally. And for new facilities or amenities that come afterwards, clubs, whatever, you have to fork up the money on your own and do it. So, and that means not only building, but self-sustaining. I don't know the arrangement that HOA 2 is planning on having with pickleball, but I know when I talked to the pickleball president, he felt like the main reason they couldn't proceed with an indoor court was that under the best of circumstances, they didn't see how they could support it. So, and with outdoor courts, I don't know what that level of annual maintenance will be, but I'd certainly be open to discussing with them, what kind of support if it appears that that's something that we want to pursue. It's such a complicated matter. Fred's right. You want to please the HOA 1 members that play pickleball. We certainly want to make sure that we renew a reciprocity agreement that doesn't have a pickleball carve-out. And I think that's something that we're all concerned about. So I don't have a good answer. I just don't have a good answer. I don't think there's a good one out there. But I think you've got a lot of people that are supporting the pickleball, supporting and working with HOA 2 on this. We've not been obstructionist. I agree with Fred that I think there's some ideal places in HOA 2 that would work, but our board has pursued that with their board. And that's a non-starter at this point in time.
I just want to tag on to both of my candidate partners here. I think that what you were referring to, Janet, was the revenue neutral, the spending neutral on any new amenities. And actually, that does exist as a policy in HOA 2 right now also. That I know. The other thing was that Fred mentioned was when SPA came to the board and did a presentation, they actually, in their presentation, alluded to a long-term solution. And those are the ones that Fred mentioned in Mountain View, Desert View, and the Preserve. So they actually are thinking about that. We're not quite sure what that is. But bottom line is that we can't promise something we can't deliver right now. Thank you.
Okay, and to some extent, you And segueing into a further subject which you've touched on, I think all we touched briefly in your opening remarks on the reciprocity issues and cooperative issues between HOA 1 and 2, and certainly pickleball is in that realm. Here are several more questions that tend to aggregate into a common thread, and I'm going to read all 5 of them here, and then let you try and rustle your way through the general topic that's brought up here. What will you do to establish a working relationship with HOA 2? What services can we consolidate? What is your position on becoming one SaddleBrooke, and how will you accomplish it? Regarding reciprocity, how will you address differences in financial strength and administrative expertise between HOA 1 and HOA 2 in reciprocity negotiations? How do you expect to extend the reciprocity agreement with a pending lawsuit against them? That's a little different, but and this one's a little different too, but I think it falls into a similar category. If HOA 2 exacts an amenity fee for HOA 1 residents, which has been rumored, will HOA 1 reimburse their residents? So, okay, good luck on all those. You want to start that, Reenie?
Yes, I will. Okay. First of all, I currently serve on a committee, a subcommittee, where we are working together with HOA 2. And we're working together to gather data, and this is part of the strategic planning process in both organizations. This has been probably one of the reasons I'm here, because it's just been such a positive experience for me to see that we sit down on the sofas over Mountain View and we start just chattering and making headway. And I can't believe that this can't be replicated more and more and more. Before I diverge too far there, there's 2 different pieces of this. It's joining forces and at least getting to the stage where we can talk about whether our patrols might unite, whether we could have the ALCs more in common, or we could possibly have our events a little more coordinated with an event committee. So these are all places that we can start to try and go. But to go to the end point of one community, I think that's a big task, and I'm not sure we want to even ponder that right now, but we can accomplish a lot by reciprocity of our good things that we have here. And so let's not go too far before we start to see whether we can get through the reciprocity agreement. But when I sit with these ladies that I'm working with, it's all positive. It's all positive. So I have to believe that we can do this. We can do little steps, little steps. Let's do ones that maybe not be so financial, and that's what I would do. Let's give it a whirl. Thank you.
I agree with Reenie in that I think in terms of working together with HOA2, building relationships is really what it's all about. And I think the more times that we can have committees like Reenie's, safety and security, safety and rec and wellness is working together also. The patrols communicate on a regular basis. I agree ALC would be a great place for us to dovetail together. I think the more times we can work together in departments and committees, some of these people will end up being on board. So I think again that relationship building is really extremely important. I feel very strongly that having a single SaddleBrooke in terms of access to amenities, to marketing, to website, I think we could have we could explore at least economies of scale, perhaps in F&B purchasing. Certainly, now that HOA2 has private roads, I would imagine we could negotiate some better contracts for road work, since we would have a larger plate of roads to bring to the table. So I think there are some concrete ways we could work together. I personally would be a little leery of sharing our money anytime soon with them. So, I think we should date That's what I'm saying, when we get there. And I think that should have been our goal initially.
What is dating lead?
It takes a long time.
Oh, to keep it clean? All right. First of all, I got some positive news. The board, our HOA is coordinating with HOA2 in the development of a scanner system. We're talking about using card key or fobs, and we're going to be implementing this very shortly. HOA2 has already started it, but we're both sharing our databases so that all of the individuals using these scanners, whether they be HOA2 or HOA1, can use them with one key, one card. We think that's a very positive thing that's occurred. We've also, our board has addressed HOA2 and asked them to meet on the reciprocity agreement. They've declined at this time. Part of the reason being the lawsuit that's occurred on the parking area, which that lawsuit was started not against HOA2, it was started against Robeson, because it was Robeson's land that we've been using, all of us have been using, our maintenance, golf maintenance people use it, we park there, we paved it, we striped it, we've taken care of it for 17 years. So under adverse possession laws, that's our property. And we sent a note to Robeson after we received a note from the attorneys when the transition was about to occur, telling us to get off their land. And we sent and filed a suit asking for, declaring that this was our property. And since then, HOA2 went through and they accepted the lawsuit. They knew the lawsuit was on the property, that we were doing, and they accepted it. So, and they've chosen to continue with it, and now they're blaming us. So anyway, it's something we're waiting for it to clear up. Hopefully we can get it cleared up directly with working with HOA2, and we'll all get it out of the road. But we believe, they've said that they want to work out the reciprocity agreement or work out ways that we can merge. I personally don't think we should merge our assets until we do a very detailed comparison, because they really have so much more liability than we do. They have multiple clubhouses, they're all spread around, they have multiple pools, they have the theater, they've just taken on 2 18-hole golf courses that they did not have set up in their reserves. They're trying to set money aside in their reserves, and we've been paying millions of dollars to get our courses up to where their courses need to get. All of this has to be done and planned for, but there are huge economies of savings if we can get together with them and work with them, whether it be as one HOA or as, in some cases they've done it as 3, where you have one HOA for the 2 combined and then 1 for each of them. So you never really combine all of your assets, but you've elected a 3rd board to manage all of the community and direct the community and still kept your separate end. There are ways to do it. You've got to be creative, but we're willing to work with them, and we believe they're going to work with us too, because it's to all of our advantages. So to keep this place as beautiful and in as good a condition as it is now for the future.
Okay, a couple of questions that move into the financial side of things again. First one for all of you to address is, each candidate attended the budget hearing. Proposed replacement reserve fund spending for 2019 is $1.5 million. What major replacement reserve fund spending item that was presented would you cut? Said, well, what one replacement reserve fund spending item that was presented would you cut?
Well, I can answer real quick that I didn't bring those documents with me, and I did sit through the whole meeting as part of the Finance Committee. So I can't remember anything that actually jumped out at me, to be really honest with you. I thought it was pretty reasonable, but I don't have the documents in front of me, so I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well,
because I know the answers.
Okay, all right. Well, then let me go with the
okay. There was one item, and I did miss the description of it, but I remember reading it, and it was the sink?
The sauna sink.
Yeah. It was a $40,000 sink. And unfortunately, I had to leave for that part, and it could be a wonderful sink, but that seemed to be, just jumped right out at me, was the, I know it's supposed to be maybe bacterially more effective cleaning the glasses. So if I had to, I think I would do away with the sink. Thank you.
Well, one, you said I think the expenditure is $1.25 million. I think it's actually more than that if you combine the CIF and the RRF. But it's only the RRF. But the board can transfer money between either accounts, so it's essentially one account. So I look at the reserves as both. So whatever money you have in the capital improvement fund is just the same as it was in the reserves, because we can transfer just by a vote monies between the two. The management went through and they highlighted all of the things that they'd suggest we might do away with in order to lower expenses and accumulate more money in the reserves. I personally disagree with this because I think we have a ton of money. Most of the money is not in the reserves, it's in operations. And it was never meant to have $3 million in operations. You don't need that. Board gave direction to be $800,000 in operations annually, and we're running $3 million, which is ridiculous. So I told management at this meeting that they should take and transfer some of that money into the reserves and not worry about cutting these items that we do. But they're concerned about in the future, and in 2021, when this community center might or might not be built, that we have adequate monies and don't have to assess the residents. And I'm not concerned about that because we have adequate monies right now to build it. So anyway, we're running about $7 to $8 million of cash every year. We should only be carrying about $5 million, $2 million in reserves, maybe $1 million in capital improvement. And operations should not have, we've given direction to them to have only $800,000 annually, and they're running about $3 million. So there's a lot of excess cash that could easily be transferred into the reserves. Anyway, the big thing they suggested was do away with I think they have $50,000 set aside for a community sign, which is a sign to promote the community of SaddleBrooke. And I personally agree that that sign is necessary. It's great for promotion. I proposed we actually spend more. It was in the golf budget plan a couple years ago, the master plan. They showed a beautiful sign on the second hole that backlit, says SaddleBrooke on it as you come into the community. You couldn't ask for a more ideal location. And as part of our golf, the water runs right up to it. Beautiful, used in all our promotional literature and anything we do. But management's suggesting that we possibly consider cutting costs for putting a sign like that in.
Can I make one remark?
Sure.
I do remember that. I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't agree with it, actually. I can't see that spending $50,000 on a sign that you can't see until you're already clearly in SaddleBrooke is really worth it. And then just quickly, I don't know how I feel about that sauna sink, but since Reenie brought it up, and I happen to remember, it's supposed to be a sink that allows them to get their pots and pans and things out sooner, and it reduces FTEs working on washing everything by hand. That's my understanding of it. It didn't raise a red flag for me, but the sign did.
Fred, you may have gone down the path on this next question, but let me read it just to be sure we've covered it and invite an answer from any of you. Why have the operating cash needs jumped from $1.4 million for 2016 and 17 to over $3 million for the next 10 years in the 10-year plan, when none of the operating expenses have dramatically increased or changed? Why? Why is the question?
I asked the same question of the controller, and I've never gotten an answer.
But it's asking why have the numbers changed in the
they did. If you
the
look
budget when the expenses haven't dramatically increased.
When I look at They do a 10-year summary. It should be up on your website. I'll get a copy of this. And I think it's the most important thing we live by, because it shows what our cash is going to be, when we need it, when we're going to spend it. And your board uses it as your guidance for the next 10 years. And in it also shows what we spent in 2016, 2017. And it shows that we didn't spend anywhere near that amount, and yet it jumps one year. And the only explanation I've ever gotten was that we've changed the way that we accrue money and carry over money from one year to the next. So we've got a big pot of money. We bring in $10 million of revenue, over $10 million every year. Of that $10 million, about $3.5 million is spent on operations. That's funded out of your capital, out of your funds, your fees that you get. We get about $5 to $6 million of fees every year. The rest of it comes from golf and food and beverage. And your operations runs about $3 million, $3.5 million of expense every year. But we're carrying over $3 million of cash every year, plus every year we collect over $3 million to cover those operation expenses. So there's really no reason to do it. I've never explained to me why, other than there was some change in the way we accrue the money and we deposit it in interest-bearing accounts. So I've never been able to get a good answer. I've asked Mike Traber in an email a couple times. Maybe you guys know.
I'm not going to touch that one.
Okay. Janet, you touching that one?
I'm really not, except to say that I have faith. I just have faith in Marty. I have faith in Mike Traber, Dave Calkins, Dave Taylor, all the guys and gals on the Finance Committee. I'm not an accountant, so I have to sort of bow to their judgment. But it's their money too. And I believe that every effort's being made to be transparent. I don't know if you're trying to say you think it's not, but I believe they are. But I can't really answer the question. I don't have the documents.
I have a couple of just direct questions that we'll get out here. This one is directly to Janet. And I can't see how Reenie or Fred are going to be able to answer it. But Janet, how does your experience as a CEO help you to be a better board member?
Well, I'll tell you. The one thing I learned on my way to that position and in that position is that relationships count. And I know that sounds syrupy and sappy, but it's not. If you look at any business, everything revolves around your relationship with other people. And so I found that alliance building was extremely important. I found that finding people doing the right thing and promoting them for that was always good. I feel like it's important to hold people accountable, and that includes ourselves as board members, if that's the case for me. When we look at the community service fee increase, it's so small. And I think it's a remarkable feat that our board has many boards have pulled off, some of which Fred's been on, where we haven't had an increase in 7 years. And this increase is 2%. There's nothing that I buy today that costs what it did 7 years ago. So I think that's amazing. But I guess what I'm saying is I have heard people complain about an increase in the community service fee, and I feel like in that role and in this role, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the community to not only protect your money, but to make decisions that may not always be popular and to mitigate them whenever possible. So with prices rising, with minimum wages increasing, the board made the decision to raise this community service fee, and I wholly support it. And I thought it was extremely conservative. And they knew it wouldn't be popular. And that's what I learned when I was a CEO, and that appears to be what they're doing here.
Well, and position that to you, but really, Reenie or Fred, if you have feelings from your past experiences that you think are worthy of bringing forward as granting you an edge in the role on the board up here.
I think the position that I retired from as the Director for Information Systems at Vassar College, I was a manager. I had about 8 professional people working for me. My job was such that we had to evaluate new software packages, and we worked with every college department, finance, human resources, student records. So it was quite varied, and I was in management, and I think what Janet says about your relationships with people and how you deal with them, but I think what the biggest thing I learned when I was in management was that you have to let your people do their job. You cannot micromanage people, and I think we have this here where we have a wonderful administration and we have a board with oversight and who gives advice, and relationships are amazing. They communicate, and so I think that I would fit in really well with working with people who are allowed to do their job, and I think that's very important.
The money being spent is, like Janet indicated, is a very small amount for what we have as an increase. It's more, why are we doing it when we already have all of this cash? I see for the future that if we were setting money aside, I would vote for an increase. But we have not designated where we're going to be spending money. One of the reasons I run for this board, I've been on many boards and HOAs, and all the other HOAs I've been on, the residents have to approve a budget, annual budget. They have to approve any expenditures. Here you don't. Your board, Janet said, I said, we have a lot of money. We can spend it on anything. The board can spend the cash on anything they want. There's nothing in our bylaws that says that we have to spend it on any one thing, or even the reserves. The reserves is just a big pot of money. So you want to be real concerned about putting a lot of cash here, and if you don't have any say in it, and someday I'm not going to be on the board, and I won't have any say in what's going to happen to this money. So be aware, it's not to our benefit to accrue a lot of money unless we need it for specific needs. That's why your reserves are very important, and your capital improvement fund are very important, but we need to specify exactly what it's going to be spent on and let the residents give their input. So I'm really concerned about making the residents have a voice in what we do. And that's one of the reasons why I run for this board. Thank you.
This question along that line is directed to you, Fred, but I think all three may want to respond to it. Fred, how do you justify spending $260,000 to expand the Catalina Activity Center without a single town hall meeting, similar to Roadrunner patio expansion and the remodel of the golf driving range and practice area? How can we count on you for true transparency in the future?
We told you we were doing it. Come on. But no, it started out as a $125,000 expense. This was not supposed to be a big major expense. But we've discovered on everything we're spending now, there are more rules and regulations covering these things. The golf maintenance facility that we built down here was a $50,000 steel shed. All of a sudden it became a $90,000 or $100 and some thousand when the fire department came in and said we had to sprinkle it. That's going to happen now all the time. Golder Ranch is getting tougher. Your rules and regulations, and we have older buildings, and we're now being required to sprinkle these buildings when we come in and do things to them, and that's what happened out there. We added a 1,000 square foot building to a much smaller building, and they required we make all sorts of improvements on it. It wasn't, and once we started it, we'd already started doing things and expending money, and they just continued, and it just has kind of blossomed. But now it's under control. We've got a beautiful facility, I think, being done, and actually it's probably going to come in under what the $250,000 I think that we have in our budget right now. to do it.
Any comments, Reenie or Jen?
Well, I guess, this is sort of like, I may have had my head in the sand, but I just, not aware of that we've been dealing with that many overages in our projects. And so...
The tennis center.
Well, yeah, that was unfortunate too. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's... So, I mean, I think that's of concern to me, and I probably would be very interested in just, I mean, I'm not at this point going to point blame at anybody, but I just think this is sort of interesting, and I'd like to find out more about it. Thank you.
I would suggest that you start coming to the finance committee, because I mean, this is a very transparent organization, and this is complicated. None of us sitting up here are accountants, but it's extremely complicated, and I do believe there's no subversion going on. I think, somebody was talking about not having so much money in the reserves, but then, Fred, you turned right around and said we're spending money like crazy. So, it's sometimes you don't always designate everything that you want to spend money on in the reserve fund. Sometimes it's a placeholder, but you still have to reserve the cash. I'm a girl that likes to save money.
This is what we've been doing for the last 30 days. This is your business plan and your budgets for next year, just for next year. This is the first couple of passes. That's what does.
We're approaching the end here. I have a couple of specific questions from Pete, and I think the candidates are willing to stick around afterwards and address any unique questions to individuals or to hear your opinions on any of the topics that have been brought up here tonight. I think I'd suggest that that's probably the best way to address those issues. And at this point, if there are no further questions, I'd just like to remind you that the ballots are coming out on the 26th of October, and that you have until the 26th of November to submit your votes, and the winning two will be announced on the 28th of November. So beyond that, there's not much unless you have something specific for them you'd like to address individually. So thanks for attending. See you next year.